Alright, Path of Exile players, watch my mana in the gameplay. A lot of people always want to know, how are you always at maximum mana when you're spamming your abilities? Do you have some sort of secrets? So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how we never run out of mana for the most part in the game. Like if you are shooting into nothing, well, you will run out of mana. But for the most part, this is going to be our ultimate mana solving guide. Gear is one of the most important steps to achieving basically infinite mana and solving the mana problems. So depending on what build you are playing, there's lots of different pieces of gear, and you don't have to have every single one of these that I'm about to show you. Just a couple here and there will add up. So let's go ahead and hop right into it. So there's a couple choices that I want to go over that could be for your build. Now, we could just say, oh, throw on a Theifs Torment ring, GG's, thanks for watching. But there's a lot more to it because, one, this item is not very cheap, and you may need your ring slot. But maybe you have an extra gem slot. You can slot in this gem over here called Inspiration. This is a great way to reduce the mana cost with what it actually does. So it's going to give you a negative mana multiplier, which would be good. It does use up a socket, but maybe you're using a very specific skill to activate, right? So what you're doing is you're trying to activate like exposure, you're trying to activate a shock condition or something that you're just trying to activate so the enemy has like some sort of debuff or negative condition, and that way you're not really losing out on DPS because that skill that you're using to activate or trigger something else isn't going to actually matter in terms of its DPS. So even though you're losing a socket, maybe you have an extra socket and you just want to reduce that mana cost of your secondary skill, so to speak, if that makes sense. So that can be an option as well. Another thing that you can look at, you can get this on your quiver or your weapon, where you can get mana per enemy killed. This is a great way to also solve mana problems, but maybe you don't have access to a quiver. A lot of weapons in general will have this tag like mana per enemy kill. You can see this up, and I kept this in relatively like decent like budget prices. Most of the stuff that you're seeing over here, I put a limit of like 10 exalts, because when you get into like really expensive pieces of gear, they're going to be absolutely like, you know, near perfect. I wanted to show you guys realistic stuff that everyone can kind of achieve too. So just looking at like, you know, just any two-hander with like 500 DPS, you can get like, you know, 30 plus mana on kill, and that will solve for the most part, unless you're at a boss, because when you're at a boss, there's in general, there's not going to be a bunch of ads that spawn in for you to eliminate to refill up your mana. But your goal with Path of Exile in general is usually to eliminate the boss before that, you know, mana gets all the way consumed via your potions. A lot of times, what people do in Path of Exile is they just try to one-phase the boss. That is something that you can try to do. But if you want extra sustain, you can get mana potions that have like extra charges per second. Honestly, it's a pretty low ratio, but if you're really on a longer boss fight and there's nothing to eliminate, you could consider that as well. That can help you out with mana. But Path of Exile 2, it's much more difficult to kind of solve mana. That's why I wanted to make this video too. Because in Path of Exile 1, I would just say, oh, just slap on Inspiration. Now, Inspiration in PoE 2 is not as good as PoE 1. Inspiration actually used to give you crit, it used to give you elemental damage as well, but it no longer does that. So that's why I'm really not recommending this for like your main skill. But again, for secondary skills, Inspiration, totally A-okay. Normally you get rings and you'd have like the Benchcraft mana minus the mana cost on the Benchcraft, but again, that's not available. So you could look for it on weapons as well. It is I believe it's a suffix on the weapon. But you can look for that as well. Another thing that you can run, although most of the time with your weapons, you do want to have some sort of like percent physical damage in most cases, but this one does have a price for a reason. You could also get increased maximum mana, which actually does help out when you are recovering a percent, because we're talking about an anoint. So a lot of times people still want mana recovery. This like percent mana on kill is really good, because as you start leveling up, as you start getting more mana, when you get a percent, it's going to really help out. There's a really easy anoint for a lot of attack-based builds. This is really, really great that don't hit for physical. If you do hit for physical, it's actually relatively easy to solve with something that lets you leech physical attack damage as mana, and you can get this over on your gloves. And the reason why I really like this is, even though we're playing like Ice Shot or like, let's say some sort of lightning build, sometimes it converts a portion of the damage, and most builds will be using, let's say, physical anyways, and with your skill it will convert a portion of it, and that other portion that is not converted, well, you still get to leech a small amount. Now, don't expect it to be like, you know, maybe in like the Diablo 2 era where like you just need a couple percents of leech and you're totally good to go, but it will help out a little bit, even if you are elemental. It's just if you're 100% elemental, well, then you won't get any value out of it. So just keep that in mind. But this is one of the best things that you could actually anoint. So if you anoint this, you can see I have Siphon anointed over here. And this is basically a way for you to use these little oils. And what you do is you collect these oils, and every single one of these, if I hold Alt, it will tell me unallocated, it says distilled emotions, paranoia, envy, and guilt. So if I get those three and I get these, you can get these from Delirium or you can trade these. But basically, you just right click on it, you put in the amulet, you put in the correct order of whatever like thing that you're trying to go for. This one is excellent. We're just here for that recover 2% of mana on kill. It does also give us increased amount of mana leech. So that kind of helps out with this, but for the most part, this extra stat was just another free bonus that I happen to roll on these gloves. In general, with the suffix, because that's what it is on the gloves, if you guys are maybe new to Path of Exile, every item can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, with the exception of maybe some uniques and certain other things that may break the rule. But in general, this is what you're going to kind of go for. In most circumstances on the suffix, you definitely wanted to get attack speed on your gloves and resistances, but if you can fit in that extra leech, it still could definitely be utilized. But other areas that can really help out that will give you additional mana is really good, because when you have more mana when you're recovering a percent of it, or if you have more maximum mana, since the way mana regen works in PoE2, it's based off of your total mana pool. So the more mana that you have, the more regen that you have, and if you get mana regen, it's great. But if you can get flat just mana, like 100 on your boots, maybe your amulet, as well as in your belt and your helmet, this really helps out, and they don't in general add more to the cost of the thing. That's something that's important. When you look at certain pieces of gear, like if you want boots, if boots don't have movement speed, pretty much no one wants them. But going over like rings over here, you can see, again, for the sake of the video, pretty much everything that I'm showing you guys is like 10 exalts or under when I'm showing you guys the price. Some of these items that I have, like this amulet, is definitely a little bit more than 10x, but I'm just showing you guys other options here. So on rings, you can also get mana regen and mana per enemy killed. You get any of those, that's great. I also throw in, like, I guess the sum over here. You can see we can get like a bunch of resistances. And what's interesting, if you do like a weighted sum, it will not count the implicit on the ring. So what you could do is just put like a weighted sum, slam the highest number in like the trade, and then what you can do is just scroll down or type in that you want a sapphire or you want a ruby ring or whatever ring topaz that you want, and that will not register in the search. So a lot of times you can get a really good deal. Like this one basically is this, what is this, 64 resistances. This one has no life, but you can maybe just scroll down and kind of like look for certain things that you're looking for. In general, most of the time with rings, you want like resistances, but you could also look for your character's main stat. Remember that getting int will also contribute to mana. I believe it's every 1 int in the game will give you 2 mana. So if it has like 20, 30, intelligence, that's like 60 extra mana that you may not have kind of factored in. So that's another way that you can get it. So on rings, mana regen rate is great. I mean, this number can go up quite high. And then you can also look at mana per enemy killed. Again, you don't have to have both. It's just that, like, if you're like, I really want to solve mana, those are the 2 key things that can really help out and getting a bigger mana pool. But on rings, I would say it's a little bit more difficult. I'll also link this down below because it's pretty helpful to understand like what's a prefix and what's a suffix. So you can only have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. And the increased mana regen rate is going to be a suffix on the ring, so that means you may lose out on like your potential to get like very, very high resistances on the ring itself. But again, a lot of times people won't inflate the price unless it has like a very, very high amount of like mana. So keep that in mind as well if you are looking at like rings. If you're looking at like, if you really want to go ahead and push, like let's say we just like removed the price over here, and then I was to search for like that increased mana regen. When you start getting into like the 80s plus having life and resistances, things do get a lot more pricey. But you can see this is like 25 exalts. That's like kind of reasonable, right? Or 5 over here is pretty good. But oh, okay, this one has some mana, but it doesn't have any extra resistances. So unless you want to just go RNG, buy a cheap item, look for, okay, it's got like, let's say it has, an open suffix, and maybe I can RNG 1 resistance out of it. I could just slam it, and if it doesn't sell, or if it doesn't hit, you can sell it for basically a refund. That's what I was doing for a while when I was crafting certain items. I would go and buy items that have like basically 3-ish stats that I could roll on a suffix, and that's an easy way to do it. But getting these two are kind of key here in the ring category. Also, for Amulet, you can get a massive amount of flat mana. And you can see this one is only 10 exalts. I'll just refresh the search over here. But getting a big amount of, let's say, mana regen here and flat mana is key. Obviously, you'll have to decide what other stats that you're looking for. But in general, like this one could be really good here for 2 exalts. It's called All Attributes. Solar Amulet is kind of like one of the ones that I would say is really strong because it can give you extra spirit, which could give you clarity, which is an aura, which we can go ahead and mention real quick because I actually play this build already. But if you want to throw on that aura, you can throw in your aura Clairty, which will give you 30% increased mana regen, and it only costs 10 spirit. So if you have extra spirit, hey, go ahead and throw that in. It'll definitely help out for leveling. It looks like we got someone that wants to buy a item real quick. Let's go ahead and get this item. Let's go make a quick 10 exalts. And this is the awesome thing with PoE. What I really recommend you guys to do all the time is while you're doing something else, have PoE in the background, have the audio up, and if you're trading, it really helps out. And look, I could go buy this item right here, and it's really not even that bad considering it does give us it's got good mana regen. Now, I don't know what build that you're playing, but let's say I really needed this mana. This could instantly pretty much solve a lot of problems, and then what we could do is we can just go slam it with a couple exalts and see what we hit. Ideally though, on an amulet, the big premium stat is the plus to all like projectile skills, lightning, whatever. That's kind of the stat that most people are looking for, but again, if you're just looking to solve your mana issues and you just only have one slot, again, this could be a solution to it. Again, I already mentioned that this, I mean, look at this. This is a steal for 8. Let's go refresh it because I started this before the video, but like you can see, you can get a total of 86 resistances. There's two big high resistances. You get some maximum life, maximum mana, and you can actually get Leech as well. Like this is an instant solver for physical builds. But if you're playing elemental, again, don't expect like this thing alone to solve it. It's just that once you get towards the endgame, when you're hitting for big amounts of damage, it does significantly help out. Remember, Leech is not going to be instant unless you get this modifier. There's a thing where you can make Leech instant, but it will definitely help out to get that. Another thing and a great resource is boots, and this is so cheap. Now I put in again 10 exalts is kind of our budget here for each piece, and I just weighted some all the resistances. We're looking for movement speed, and then again mana. It doesn't increase the price. You can see 89 resistances. We also have a big chunk of mana. Now the thing that's going to make boots pretty expensive if you want to get like more premium stuff, like let's say we wanted some 80 HP, and then we can go see what pops up here. We still can get 62 res. We get decent chunk of mana and life and some resistances, so that can be a great way to get it as well. And one of the best areas actually is belts. Belts are so incredibly cheap in PoE 2 for getting the maximum mana, because when people list this, when they're using all of their little like price checker tools and stuff, they really don't factor in the mana as prefix. The only thing that people really care about 99% of the time on a belt is how much maximum life does it actually have. But there's actually a great little technique that you can do, and that is to go ahead and actually also check the strength. Usually what people want, and I don't know if you guys watched the live stream, I was flipping belts quite often, and we actually had one for 2 div. And what we did was we got a belt that had triple res. So ideally, most people, this is what they're looking for on belts, by the way, is they're looking for maximum life. They don't care about anything else. Maximum life, triple res. That's kind of the go-to. Or if you're playing PoE 1, it was 100%, not Stygian Vice, instantly basically garbage, right? But in PoE 2, I think plate belt is one of the best bases, but also obviously you want to get maximum life. Like you can see, let's check out my belt over here. So like getting armor, I actually like plate belt. It's just a small amount of damage reduction. It's pretty much our only source, but it's a great way to get even small. Like you can see, it's only 6% damage reduction, but like the rest of the prefixes on the belt in PoE 2 are pretty much garbage. Like you have life, mana, armor. So like that's exactly what I would shoot for as far as the belt goes. You can see that's exactly what we went for. We went for life, armor, and mana, and that is excellent. And then for the suffixes, you can get strength. Strength actually would count towards HP, which is great. 1 strength is 2 HP, so if you get like 30 strength, 35 strength on a belt, that's almost a life roll on its own. So one secret that you can do with, let's say if you were looking for belts, we could instantly do this. So belts aren't going to have movement speed, but we're pretty much kind of looking for the same stats anywhere. So if we just go to belt over here, and then we just slam down that number, and you can see over here we can get the sum. You can get for 10x, you can get a belt that has armor, life, and double resistances. Triple is really where the price will start to shoot up, but again, the secret then would be to remove maximum life and then instead go for, let's say, strength, because again, a lot of people would be like, okay, strength is a good stat, but like they may not list it for that much. So let's see if we can go ahead and shoot for, let's go for the sum of at least like 40, so we get at least 40 resistances in total, and then we're going to sort it by the strength, and it will not have, oh, this is actually not bad at all. Wait, does this have, this has an open prefix. I'm sorry. This is open. The prefixes are full. It has an open suffix. If we bought this for 10x and then also slammed on top of that any other resistances, this would be potentially money here, because we have already 90 life and then 36, that's what is that, 72, 74 life, right? So we have an additional amount of life from the strength and this, and it already has mana, and these are two okay stats. You can also always look at items that if you're interested in gambling it, you could just slam an Exalt in it, and if this item hit any other resistances on the suffix, and like if I was to go look at the belts, there is, as far as the suffixes go, you have all of the resistances. Now, this one, I don't know what the weights are, to be fair with this, but let's like use it kind of by a process of elimination here in terms of like, what could we roll? So we cannot get strength, fire, lightning res on this. So strength, fire, or one of the resistances. So basically we have like two different resistances, right? We can hit cold res or we can hit chaos res. So there's 2 out of, and remember, it's already got on the thing strength, fire, lightning. So it already has like 3 of the things filled in. So we could go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would say this one's okay, but like if we look at it like 9, we have like a 2 out of 9 chance out of maybe getting something good. Now, obviously there's weighted rolls, and like you could roll like garbage cold resistance and get like 6 cold res and whatever, and it's just like not that great, right? But at the end of the day, this is another way to facilitate getting good items, and I mean, we could go get this item and maybe flip it for a profit. I think belts are one of the easiest ways to flip. Reduced charm charges used. Like I said, I think the best one is plated belt. That's why I'm using this. But the reduced flash charges used isn't really a good stat. So basically, our belt here could be improved. Like, you could always improve one stat on your piece of gear. And then what you can do is remove this item. So like, let's say we get a new belt that has cold res. I could look at like my other pieces of gear and say, oh, well, what my boots have cold res. I don't need this cold res anymore. Maybe I can get an upgrade over here. So keep in mind, there's always ways where you can upgrade via making another piece of gear like a little bit better. You're not going to get mana in here, and the whole video is mainly meant for mana. So like maybe our helmet over here, maybe we want to increase the maximum mana on this one. Now this one's actually pretty good already as far as giving us maximum mana, but the chaos res could be higher. We could get triple resistance. Helmets are a great way to get maximum mana, and like triple res helmets aren't actually that expensive, especially with mana. Again, a lot of times, depending on the piece of gear that you're looking for, that can really help out. But those are the areas that I would say really help out with mana. Again, getting that maximum mana. The easiest ones where you can get like cheap upgrades, I would say, again, boots, belt, helmet, get that maximum mana. Over here, if we get 3 pieces with like 120-ish, you can see this was like 140, but 120, 100 mana, that could almost double your mana. I believe I was at like about 500 mana before I started stacking more mana here, and that really helped me out, because the more that I have for my mana, like in terms of my pool, when I recover a percent of it, it will recover more. And what we have on my build, just to give you guys a reference, I don't have any like mana recovery here, or I think on my other weapons that these don't have extra mana on kill. This amount is really small. It's again, everything adds up. We have 23 mana per kill here, and then we also happen to have maximum mana on my other ring, and then I have increased mana regeneration rate. That is pretty nice to have, and that looks like that was really about it. So we have increased mana regen, we have a lot of flat mana, and then mana per kill. Mana per kill is probably one of my favorite ones, but again, on bosses in particular, what I rely on is a high amount of damage. Like if I go to a boss, I'm going to do this, and the boss is going to melt so fast that most of the time I need to pop my flask maybe one time on a boss. But other than that, most of the time when you're playing PoE, unless you're set up as like a boss killer, you're going to kill so many monsters, and that's how you will recover. Obviously, you have to have enough DPS, because if you start shooting into nothing, and the things don't die, right? Then that can become a problem. So it depends on how much DPS you have too. Factor that in, because maybe Leech is going to be better, maybe mana on kill is going to be better, or regen. So again, if you can't kill things fast, mana regen and Leech is going to be your friend. But if you are able to kill things fast, mana on kill is probably numerically the easiest thing, because you get that on like 2 rolls. And on average, towards the end of the game, a lot of your stuff will cost like maybe 150 when you start looking at 6 linking. Right now, we're still currently on a 5, but if I was to go with like a 6 link, yeah, we could be looking at around 150 mana, depending on the scale. And that's not counting all of your cast on whatever, all these other meta gems that will increase your mana cost. So factor that in as well. As you start increasing your mana cost, you're going to have to also get more mana regen, all that stuff. Anyways, hopefully this guide helped you guys out, because I know mana was quite annoying, and it took me kind of like a day to look at every single piece of gear, because we didn't have the bench craft. Go ahead and slam minus mana cost on rings, which was usually the easiest solution. That and inspiration in PoE 1 was so easy, but in PoE 2, yeah, you gotta stack mana. That was my easy solution that was cheap too, because again, when you start looking at some pieces of gear, it gets expensive. Anyways, that's gonna wrap it up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here and you do want to see more videos, guides, and stuff in the future, hit subscribe, turn on that bell, and also check the pin. I have like my PoE Essentials guide. I'm gonna include this one in there, because being out of mana, it sucks in Path of Exile, because yeah, you're sitting there waiting for your mana to go back up. But anyways, that's gonna wrap it up. I'll see you guys in the next video. Check the pin if you guys want to watch more Path of Exile Essential videos. Peace out. Or if you're watching this on TikTok, it's in the bio.